Hello again, baseball fans, and welcome into episode number 25 of Ducks on the Pod. We're here to talk about the National League Championship Series today. First of all, we're going to take a look at how the Cubs and Dodgers got to this point, beating the Nationals and the Diamondbacks respectively. And then we're going to break down this rematch of the 2016 NLCS between Los Angeles and Chicago. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into it. All right, so the Cubs beat the Nationals in what was just a bananas Game 5 on Thursday night. This was quite the series, one of those that you wish could have gone 7 games. Let's take a look at some of the key moments. Game 1 was a pitcher's duel, and I loved it. Steven Strasburg was great getting through 7 with 2 unearned runs on the board, but Kyle Hendricks was just a bit better, putting up 7 zeros and handing over a lead to his pen. Being able to outduel Strasburg was huge. If you're a Nats fan and I tell you Strasburg goes 7, giving up 2 runs, you'd probably like your chances to snag a victory with your offense up against a soft-tossing Kyle Hendricks. Instead, Hendricks raised him just a little bit, and that little bit turned out to be the difference. Bryce Harper's mammoth blast in the 8th inning of Game 2 will be the only lasting joyous memory for Nationals fans from this whole ordeal. I'll get more into that later because this was the turning point of the series. In Game 3, Scherzer went 6 1/3 with no hits. Then Zobrist doubled and Baker put Solis in to face Schwarber. Madden pinch hits Almora, who singles home Zobrist. It was one of those chess match situations that you only really get in the senior circuit, with the pitchers hitting and the double switches and the pinch hitting and all this. Madden won the round, and the Cubs' first run of the afternoon injected some life into their dugout, which propelled them to a shocking 2-1 win on a cold day at Wrigley. Michael A. Taylor's Game 4 grand slam off of Wade Davis with 2 outs in the 8th was a massive insurance policy for a team that was fighting for survival in that one. And then Game 5 was downright madness. In the 2nd inning, Michael A. Taylor struck again, a 3-run shot this time. But the game turned when Addison Russell laced a 2-out, 2-run double off of Max Scherzer in the 5th. From there, just really too many wacky things to even mention them all on this show. That 5th inning with Scherzer was freakish. Here's something that should blow your mind. Read this in an article this week. The Cubs' strange go-ahead 5th included an intentional walk, a passed ball after a strikeout, a catcher's interference call, and a hit by pitch. Now, according to Baseball Reference, none of the 2.73 million half innings from Major League Baseball stored in the site's database contained these 4 plays in the same turn at the plate. In fact, only 5 games within that database contained those 4 plays in the same game. So yeah, go ahead and tell me that old Dusty Baker mismanaged his team out of another postseason series. Then I'll know you must not have been watching. Anyway, you've heard the cliche, finding a way to win. Well, there's never been a better example of that than what the Cubbies were able to do here. Check this out. Compared to the Nats in this series, the Cubs had the worst batting average and on-base percentage. They scored fewer runs and allowed more runs. They walked less and struck out more. They hit only 2 homers to Washington's 6, and they still found a way to win 3 games. That is the stuff that champions are made of. Honestly, I don't think they find those ways without having gone through their championship run from last fall. At this point, this team knows what it takes, and they've got this wonderful ability to not get down on themselves when they are down on the scoreboard. For me, it's a treasure to watch the way that they battle. The turning point of the series, I mentioned it earlier, Bryce Harper's homer in Game 2 was the rallying point that Washington needed. Had he not hit it, the Cubs would have likely been up 2-0 in the series going back to Chicago, and I give the Nationals no shot at coming back from that. Instead, Harper homers, the series is tied at 1, and we end up with a fantastic 5-game showdown. The guy that didn't deserve to lose in this series was Steven Strasburg. Are you kidding me? This guy is ready to take the next step. He's always been good, always had the stuff. Now he's got the experience of taking the ball and shutting down the defending champs in consecutive starts. The first one didn't go his way, and the Nats offense couldn't pick him up in that one. The second one was a masterpiece following a lot of confusion about whether or not he would even start. Apparently he was sick. He wasn't going to go, and then the game gets pushed back a day. He's able to get some treatment. Next thing you know, he's through 7 innings, and the Cubs haven't scored. Cannot wait to see this guy next year. The sky is the limit for Strasburg. Let's check the home run picks. Game 1, I had Hayward and Murphy. Hayward didn't hit well all week. Murphy homered in Game 5, which I called. We'll get to that later. Game 2, Bryant and Wieters. Chris Bryant, he didn't have such a great series at the plate either. 2 hits in Game 2, but he struck out in each of the 5 games, 10 total, including a golden sombrero in Game 4. Hopefully he can turn it around here in the championship series. Game 3, Zimmerman and Zobrist. Zimmerman homered in Game 2, and add Zobrist to the list of Cubs who didn't have much luck at the dish. Even so, he found a way to make an impact. He got on base twice in Game 5, coming around to score both times. Game 4, Harper and Rizzo both went deep in Game 2. Of course, I already told you how momentous Harper's blast was. Rizzo had only 4 hits in the series, but he drove in 6 runs, one in every game except 4. And then in Game 5, Bryant and Murphy. What did I tell you about Murphy's numbers against Kyle Hendricks? He doesn't hit him often, but when he does, it leaves the yard. And, I mean, we all had Michael A. Taylor pegged as the game breaker, right? No. Simply amazing what he did. 5 points for me in this series. Only 8 homers in the series, which is very strange considering what we've seen all across baseball this season. The real MVP in my book was Steven Strasburg. He really was the best player on either side. Nobody hit well, and the pitchers who made more than one appearance all got touched up in at least one of them, except for Strasburg. He did take the loss in Game 1, but he didn't deserve it. Both runs were unearned. As I mentioned earlier, I was seriously impressed with the way that Strauss took the ball in Game 4 and just shoved it down the Cubs' throat. That's a start that we're always going to look back on when we talk about him in future postseasons. Now let's head out west and talk about a series that's been done for almost a week now because the Dodgers swept their way past the Arizona Diamondbacks. Key moments in this series, there weren't too many of them, but the Dodgers hanging a 4 on the board in their first at-bat certainly set the tone for the series. Kershaw had already struck out Arizona's 2 best hitters in Goldschmidt and Martinez. Manager Torey Lovullo was forced into starting Taijuan Walker in Game 1 because he had already used Greinke and Robbie Ray in that wild card game. So when Justin Turner hit a 3-run shot just 3 batters in, what seemed like a long shot to begin with started to appear more like an impossibility. Unfortunately, having to play in that wild card game really affected the way that the Diamondbacks were able to line up their pitching against the powerhouse Dodgers, and they were just never able to recover from it. The bottom of the 5th in Game 2 was essentially the nail in the Diamondbacks' coffin. Jimmy Sherfy was brought in for Ray because Kike Hernandez, who has surprisingly terrific numbers against Ray, was up next. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts sends Curtis Granderson up instead following the pitching change. He singles. Logan Forsythe singles home a run and then swipes second. Austin Barnes doubles home 2 more, and all of a sudden, it's 6-2 Dodgers, and the Diamondbacks are reaching deeper and deeper into a depleted bullpen. A quick aside, I do want to mention that sadly this was Sherfy's postseason debut. He faced 3 batters, they all got hits and came around to score. So what was a cool story, Sherfy pretty much talking his way onto the playoff roster just by telling Lovullo that he wanted the ball. It turned into a nightmare for both the pitcher and the manager. Not at all what you want to see as a baseball fan. Hopefully both can bounce back next season. Austin Barnes' leadoff solo shot in the 6th inning of Game 3 took the last bit of air out of Arizona's sails. Daniel Descalso had homered in the 5th to bring the Diamondbacks within 1. And even though it was just the second hit that Yu Darvish had allowed, this is the postseason and most everything at least feels possible. But after Barnes' homer, the lead, even at 2 runs, seemed insurmountable, and the ending was inevitable. The turning point of the series, can there really be a turning point in a series sweep during which the losing team had a lead for a grand total of 3 innings? Frankly, the Dodgers were never in any danger of losing this series. The guy that did not deserve to lose for the Diamondbacks was Archie Bradley. After hitting a 2 RBI triple in the wild card game, Bradley went multiple innings in games 2 and 3 of the division series. 4 2/3 total, 1 unearned run, 3 hits, 3 walks, struck out 5. More important than the numbers was the sheer fact that he was able to eat some of those crucial middle innings for a team that didn't have many bullpen options left. Let's check in on the home run picks. Game 1, I went Martinez and Grandal. JD came through for me. I called Justin Turner in Game 5, but he must have known that this was going to be a sweep because he went deep in his first at-bat. Game 2, Iannetta and Bellinger. Bellinger was just a game late. Game 3, Seager and Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt was a game early. Game 4, Hernandez and Iannetta. These were just for funsies, really. Game 5, Goldschmidt and Turner both took care of their business early. So 5 points for me in this series, 2 for JD's. Game 1, Tater. 1 for Turner, even though he chose Game 1 instead of 5. 1 for Bellinger going a game late. 1 for Goldschmidt going a game early. Not many points to be had, it being a sweep and all. That's 10 total points from the NLDS and a grand total of 28 through the first round of the postseason. The real MVP, Justin Turner, he was the best hitter on either side, and his first inning dinger in Game 1 established the tone for the series. The Diamondbacks had success against the Dodgers during the regular season, but this is October, and Arizona wasn't quite ready for it. Los Angeles finally looks like it is, and Turner led the way during Phase 1. So that's how they got here. Now let's take a look at how the Cubs and the Dodgers match up against each other. We'll start, as we always do, with the history lesson. Dodgers took 4 of 6 from the Cubs in the season series. They swept them out of town by a combined 18-4 in late May. And the Cubs took 2 of 3 in their home opening series all the way back in early April. 7-4 the spread in that one. As we know, Chicago was a totally different team in the second half, so I'm not putting a whole lot into these earlier meetings, except that they were all close and extremely low scoring. Now, the history that I'm interested in here is the show these two put on this time last year. The Cubs won the 2016 NLCS in 6 games over the Dodgers. John Lester and Kyle Hendricks each turned in a pair of strong starts. Lester split the series MVP award with Javi Baez. You might remember that was his official coming out party. Kershaw threw 7 scoreless innings in Game 2, but the Cubs got the last laugh, putting up 5 runs in 5 innings on Kershaw in the Game 6 clincher. LA was let down by its bats, really. The team slashed 210, 292, 301. And when you hit the ball like that, you're going to have a hell of a hard time winning any series against any team. The marquee matchup, the Dodgers running game versus Wilson Contreras. The Cubs allowed the most stolen bases in the majors this year, by far the most in the National League. It's the one thing that they don't do well on the defensive side. That's in spite of having a catcher with a cannon. If Wilson Contreras didn't catch for multiple pitchers who were terribly slow in their deliveries from the stretch, I'm sure he'd finish in the top 5 in terms of cutting runners down on the base paths. Unfortunately for him, the Cubs employ Lester, Jake Arrieta, John Lackey, and many others who simply take too damn long to get the ball to the plate. Now, we know about Lester's yips and how he can hardly throw the ball to first. It's a tired narrative at this point, and the worst part is it deflects blame from the rest of the staff who all need to pick up the slack. Contreras throws behind runners more than any other catcher in the game, and there's a legitimate reason for it. He's not just trying to show off his arm strength. A lot of the responsibility of holding runners on falls on his shoulders because his pitchers just can't do it for him. This is going to be a tight series where every little thing is magnified. If the Dodgers can get on and get over to second base with regularity, that increases the pressure of every pitch. It turns singles into RBIs, and in these close games that could come back to bite the Cubbies. The Dodgers have decent speed up and down the lineup with a lot of guys who are capable of swiping a bag if you aren't paying close enough attention. Yasiel Puig, Chris Taylor highlight the group with 15 and 17 respectively, which are large totals in today's game. I expect LA to run early and often and continue to run until Contreras cans a few of them to prove he's up to the task. This game, inside the game, will be a big factor in this series. You got to watch out for Chris Taylor. He's the straw that stirs the Dodgers' drink. He leads off, gets on base, gets around the bases, and more times than not, he scores. As he goes, so does LA's offense, and they're going to need him to be at his best to beat the Cubs. Some other news and notes. Let's have some fun with some numbers. The Cubs ranked third in the National League in home runs. The Dodgers were fourth with just 2 fewer. The Cubs first in on-base percentage. Dodgers third, just .004 points behind them. Both teams slugged .437 this summer, good for 4th and 5th. They rank 6 and 7 in strikeouts. It's really eerie how statistically similar these offenses are. Kershaw started against the Cubs on May 28, and it did not go well. He lasted just 4 1/3, allowing 4 runs on 11 hits, 3 of which cleared the fence off the bats of Contreras, Baez, and Rizzo. Needless to say, Kershaw will be looking to turn that around when he gets the ball for Game 1. I was this close to giving the marquee matchup to the 2 managers in this series. I decided to go with something on the field so that I could dive a little bit more into it. But still, Joe Maddon versus Dave Roberts is going to be a treat to watch. These two are the best in the biz, and they're going to be going at it head-to-head for the second time in as many years. So how much has Roberts learned now that he's got 2 seasons under his belt? And what kind of tricks does Maddon have planned? They won't be playing, but these two are the most important participants in this showdown. Of course, I've got some more home run picks. Let's start in Game 1. That's normally a good place to start. Anthony Rizzo and Logan Forsythe. Rizzo loves him some Kershaw. In 19 at-bats, he's got 7 hits, and 3 of them have left the yard. Joe Maddon hasn't yet announced who he'll hand the ball to for Game 1. It's probably either Quintana or Lackey. I'm going to guess he goes with Quintana, and I'll pick Forsythe, who's got 5 hits, including a home run in 11 at-bats against him. Now, the problem with trying to make these picks is that in the postseason, probable pitchers often aren't announced too far in advance of the games. So other than Kershaw going in Game 1, we don't know who's going to be throwing when. And that makes playing these matchups a total guessing game. So here we go. Game 2, Chris Bryant and Curtis Granderson. Bryant is always a good pick. I don't think I need to justify that one. The Grandy man hits John Lester as few others can. How about a 296, 339, 537 in 59 career plate appearances? Whenever it is that Lester is going to get the ball, Granderson will take him deep. In Game 3, I'm going to go with Curtis Granderson again, as well as Wilson Contreras. As good as Granderson's numbers are against Lester, they're even better against Jake Arrieta. 324, 375, 706 in 40 plate appearances. Give me the Grandy man in back-to-back games. Contreras, he's just a guy that I'm a big fan of. Always pulling for him. Game 4, Yasiel Puig and Addison Russell. The last time Wrigley Field saw a right fielder with this much flair was back in the Sammy Sosa era. Puig was both entertaining and effective in the division series. He's a streaky player, but when he's hot, he is scorching. I'm expecting big things from Puig. So much of what Addison Russell does goes unnoticed, but I think after stepping up the way he did in the division series, he's ready to have a monster championship series. In Game 5, I'll take Yasmani Grandal and Kyle Schwarber. Apparently, I have a thing for catchers because Grandal is just another guy that I love to watch play the game. Remember when Schwarber bounced one off the moon and it landed on top of the scoreboard and right? Yeah, here's hoping he can wow us with something like that again. Game 6, how about Ian Happ and Cody Bellinger? I'm going with the Young Bucks here. If it weren't for Bellinger running away with the thing before the All-Star break, Happ would have gotten some serious consideration for NL Rookie of the Year. Put up a great season. Keep your eye on him. And Bellinger, of course, had a phenomenal year. He set the NL Rookie home run record this year, for Pete's sake. And to expect him to slow down now would be doing him and yourself a disservice. Game 7, Anthony Rizzo, Justin Turner. If the series is going to be won on a late inning home run, it's going to be one of these two who hits it. As far as a prediction, if I must, I'll take the Dodgers over the Cubs in 7. As I said in my prediction for the ALCS, I don't know if this pick is coming from my head or from my heart. Actually, I do know. I want this to happen so badly. I want to see the Dodgers finally get to the World Series. I want to watch Kershaw, the best pitcher in the game, on the biggest stage. It may be selfish, but I want to watch these two juggernauts slug it out over a 7-game set. That's all for episode number 25. Thanks so much, as always, for listening. Enjoy watching the 2 championship series. Check back in with us for more at the conclusion of those series, at which point we can start talking about the World Series. Until then, baseball fans, remember, keep your glove on the dirt, your bat off your shoulder, and always keep your eye on the ball.
Back, gone.